I've literally been able to travel around the world, but my favourite place to experience nature is still right here in the British Isles. In this series, I'm going to explore some of Britain's most beautiful habitats and uncover the fascinating wildlife that lives there. There it is. This week, I'm exploring the ancient Forest of Dean, home to the magnificent wild boar, the destructive grey squirrel, and one of my favourite animals, the hazel dormouse. This is the heart of the Forest of Dean, which has always been one of Britain's great forests. Areas like this are increasingly popular for recreation, but it's also one of the most valuable habitats for some of our rare and most seldom seen wildlife. Situated in western Gloucestershire, between the Severn Estuary and the gorges of the River Wye, this is one of Britain's few remaining ancient forests. Here you can walk among trees over 300 years old. As they fall and decay, they make room for younger saplings to emerge. Oaks, beech and sweet chestnut grow alongside coniferous woodland, together making up 27,000 acres of rich and varied habitat for me to explore. While I'm here, I've been given special permission to set up a simple camp. It gives me a sense of place. It's a nice thing, and also if the weather did turn bad on me, it gives me somewhere to shelter. The tree trunks and canopies provide shelter for the forest wildlife, but I'm having to make my own arrangements. And I've got a base to explore from. The diversity of trees and plants in ancient forests such as this are not only beautiful, but also provide homes for a wide variety of birds, insects and mammals. But thanks to one forest inhabitant, these trees are coming under attack. The non-native American grey squirrel is now one of the forest's most successful creatures. There's an estimated 10,000 of them here today, but their prolific breeding has disastrous consequences. Forestry Commissioner Simon Holloway has seen the problem firsthand. I can't help but notice there's a lot of squirrel damage here. You can see why people like them, because they're great fun to watch. I mean, they're intelligent and they're beautiful animals, but they just don't belong here. And it breaks my heart to see beech trees like this, because it's one of my favourite trees. And people aren't planting them anymore.
No, we've given up planting them here. It's just not worth the effort. We can spend 15 years protecting them from other animals that will, take advantage of them and prune them and kill them. And then we get them to an age where the squirrels like to live in them. They move in and they destroy the crop.
Because if you just casually walk in the countryside, you see the odd squirrel here or there. But if you actually look almost in any direction for 2 or 3 minutes, you see squirrels.
Yes.
They're an infestation.
There's just nothing holding them back. We haven't got the diversity of predators to control them. Even our goshawks in this forest, they're just one predator. We haven't got any pine martens. We haven't got any of the other major predators that would be taking advantage of them in their own native American forests. The squirrels systematically strip the bark to feed on the sap below, leaving the tree vulnerable to disease. You can see on here, can't you? Yeah, there's a perfect example here. You imagine this is the top side of the branch, something that you wouldn't see from the ground. And the squirrel sat on the top and been eating the bark away to get at the sap and to feed off of that. But this
done it several times. You can see it's healed over there.
It's healed there. Yeah. But this allows fungus to get in, and it also weakens the branch. And as that dies, once the leaves start coming out on it, it then snaps and falls out the tree. Yeah. And if this is done to the main leaders of the tree,
well, you can see
then it completely deforms the shape of the tree.
I mean, look at that tree's tortured, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at that tree, that's really badly damaged.
Yeah, it's just a perfect example of squirrel damage. They'll come in here.
I've seen squirrels do this in the winter, and then a couple of days later come back and lick beads of sap off from the base of the tree.
Okay, yeah.
But this higher damage is usually done later, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's typically sort of in the spring into early summer, and they're peeling the bark then and then licking the sap as it rises.
Well, why do they do it?
Could be sexual frustration of the immature males that don't get to breed, and they're taking that out on the tree. The obvious nutritional values of the sugary saps rising through the tree.
But you only get this when you get a high density of squirrels.
High densities of squirrels. The research has said at about 5 squirrels per hectare, you don't get the problems. As it starts to go over there, the damage increases. You know, from bite marks like this on the trees to small patches to an entire tree being stripped of all its bark. This, you can see it's done in patchworks, and it is trying to heal itself up again. But you can see that the wood in there is dead and dying, and there's already
it's doomed.
Yeah.
The tree damage is obvious evidence that squirrels are active in the area, but if you look closely, you can uncover more subtle signs that will tell you which other animals have been taking advantage of the food supply. We're looking for the cases of hazelnuts, and a whole range of different animals, particularly rodents, feed on them, and the way their teeth work leaves different evidence that can help us to find what we're looking for. You can see here, for example, this one here has been broken open by a squirrel. A squirrel will break a nut open from the ends, particularly adults can really get their teeth around and just break the nut in half. Whereas this one has a really neat hole in it, the sort of thing a dormouse leaves. During winter, when food is scarce, dormice have to hibernate in order to survive. They sleep in hollow tree trunks, in nests woven from available plant materials. This is interesting. This is honeysuckle. One of the things to look out for is signs that the honeysuckle bark has been stripped. Now, it does peel naturally, but that actually looks to me like it may have been pulled off. And why that's significant is that dormice line their nests with honeysuckle bark. Sadly, due to loss of habitat, the common dormouse is not so common anymore. In an effort to protect them, the Forestry Commission has set up a nest box scheme. Their only female wildlife ranger, Sid Davis, has agreed to inspect them while I'm here. So that's the next nest box.
Yes. We have a mouse.
Look at that. Oh, they're beautiful.
He's still sleeping, but he's breathing quite heavily.
They are so cute. During hibernation, the dormouse's temperature drops to match its surroundings, and its heart rate falls by 90% to conserve energy.
He's actually waking up now. Normally it would take them, when they've been into hibernation, about 20 minutes to wake up, but because the temperature is quite warm, he's ready to...
He's beautiful.
To run about.
When we worked in the fields and in the hedges, people used to keep them as pets, didn't they?
They did, yes. These days there's not so much coppicing carried out, so people don't come across them quite as frequently as they would have done years ago. This is why we put boxes up to try and monitor how many there are in the woodlands.
And what do we know? How are they doing?
In this part of the world, in this woodland, they're doing really well.
That's great news. So tell me about the life of a dormouse. What are the dangers that they face?
They're really nocturnal species, so they've got dangers like owls, birds of prey, foxes. Probably the biggest dangers to dormice in the past has been lack of habitat, connecting wildlife corridors together, where you have new roads go through. Dormice don't like crossing open ground, so you have to have pieces of cover that cross from one part of the forest to the other, because they won't like going across open tracks and rides.
It must be a joy to do, isn't it?
It's great joy to do, yes. The dormice are probably one of the favourite parts of the year. I've seen them all curled up and fast asleep. They're quite an iconic species. Their big black eyes and their great long whiskers, with their little tail over the top of their heads as well. So there's not many people that don't enjoy their work with checking dormouse boxes.
Thanks to the work of the Forestry Commission, dormouse numbers here are rising. In the last 6 years, another important and much larger creature has also made a comeback. after a 300-year absence, the wild boar has returned to the forest. I've come to the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire to explore one of Britain's oldest woodlands. The forest is home to a wide variety of flora and fauna, but until very recently, one important inhabitant has been missing. The wild boar was a favourite quarry for the royal hunt, but 300 years ago the last boar was hunted out. Just recently, they were reintroduced to the forest. No one knows for sure where they came from, but it's thought they may have escaped from a local farm. 6 years on, and the boar are thriving. At this time of year, sows are out in the forest with their piglets, rooting for tender tubers and grubs, using their sensitive noses like small ploughs. 2 or 3 sows and their young form a group called a sounder. One of these sows will be the dominant female, but their piglets are happy suckling from either of them until they're fully weaned at 4 months old. These footprints here belong to the wild boar. Wild boar kind of walk down at heel a little bit, rather like a teenager that scuffs their heels, and because of that, the shorter dew claws which are higher up on the foot often show in soft ground, and that's exactly what we've got here. But what's really interesting is the different sizes of boar tracks we're getting here. This track here is very large. You see the mark it's made as it's gone in, and how wide the dew claws are. That's a very big animal. Maybe that's the boar. The tracks lead to this small depression at the edge of the forest that has collected water, creating a sticky mud bath. Well, it looks like they've been having a fine old time here. This is a wallow. No prizes for guessing what they like to do there. I guess it's their version of a beauty treatment. They come in here and wallow, and it helps to get rid of parasites from their fur. Quite a sight, isn't it? They've had a glorious time in there. The boar's recent reappearance is controversial. Locals are concerned that their relentless rooting in the topsoil for tubers and insects can damage the forest plant life, whereas others recognise the constant churning of the topsoil helps to spread seeds and let the soil breathe, so the boar are actually contributing to the diversity of the forest. The forest's rich supply of natural resources hasn't escaped man's attention. Since the Stone Age, this area has been mined extensively for limestone and iron. Ben Lennon from the Forestry Commission has come to show me how the forest's heritage has shaped the landscape. Ben, that soil there really intrigues me. That looks like red ochre.
I think it is red ochre.
Let's have a look. I think it is, isn't it? Oh, look at that. Wow, that's fantastic. You can imagine hunter-gatherers in this area using that to colour themselves. I mean, it's fantastically brilliant pigment, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And the whole area is very rich in mineral resources like ochre. This is a limestone area. It's called the scowls. All these types of workings are called the scowls. They're very rich in iron, like ochre, like iron ore, that forms big veins right through the limestone. Certainly later prehistoric peoples would have come here to start mining for iron, and these area of the scowls would have been surface workings, and they wouldn't have been able to go very deep because of the limits of technology, so the veins of iron close to the surface would have been very, very prized, and that would have drawn people to this area. And of course, when the Romans came here, they would have seen that the local people were using these iron products and products such as ochre as well, and would have capitalised on these surface workings, and the iron industry for the Romans really took off here in the 2nd and 3rd century, and it was a huge industry, and much of the wealth and the product of the iron came out from the Dean down to the Wye, down to the River Severn, and out into the wider Roman Empire.
Wow, it's really deep this side, isn't it?
Very much this side.
You can really see how much material has been removed from here.
Yeah, I mean, the floor of the quarry must be 10-15 metres below our current level here, so huge volumes of material removed.
And that was all brought up by hand?
All brought up by hand, probably on ladders with baskets on their backs. Very, very hard labour.
It must have been horrible work. They must have been absolutely covered in the ochre as well. It's very beautiful though. There's a calmness here now.
There's a lovely serenity to it.
The underlying geology of the forest, the limestone and sandstone, create ideal soil conditions for plant life. When spring arrives, the forest is bursting with life. Before the tree canopies cast the forest floor in shade, there are just a few weeks when floor-dwelling plants have sufficient light to flower, creating this incredible spring display. It begins with the whites, the wood anemone, the wood sorrel, the wood bittercress, and then you get the yellow flowers like lesser celandine. They explode like fireworks on the forest floor, all in preparation for the grand finale, the bluebells. That's what I'm after, a stick like that one there. I've come into this hazel coppice because I'm looking for a stick to help me move through the woods. You might think, well, you don't need a stick, but they really are useful, and I'm going to take this hazel sapling here. It's from a coppice stool, so things will grow back, and besides, this one already has quite a lot of damage here at the base. And there we go. There was quite a tangle in there, but I was looking for a stick with a fork at the end like that. That's actually very good. And now I just need to tidy it up a little bit. You can use a lot of different trees to make a stick like this. I'm using hazel because it grows back so readily. I'm not worried whether this will last forever. It's a matter of, it is what it is. It's just a simple stick from the hedge, and at the end of its days it will return to nature. I'm not a great believer in high value, expensive, carbon fibre and aluminium walking sticks. I prefer something more natural. The simple fork at the end is good for your thumb, hence this sort of stick is called a thumbstick, but it has some other uses as well. Now I need to just start to tidy it up a little bit. And just round off the tops of these. Now to decide on the length. I'm going to cut it. I put it on the ground with the top end on the ground and the butt up, and I'm going to cut it at eye level. Chamfer off the base. And that's it done. Now, obviously you can use this stick to help you when you're moving through the woods to negotiate thickets. You can move brambles out the way. You can use it as a support if you cross a river or cross a ditch. But one of the most useful uses for a thumbstick is when you're using a binocular. Because now you can pop your binocular on top of there and steady it. And that makes a massive difference to what you see through a binocular, particularly in low light. Even in full daylight, viewing wildlife can be a challenge. Animals evolved to blend into their native environment by means of camouflage. I'm deep in the heart of the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire, on the trail of some fallow deer. There are 400 fallow deer here, but the chances of seeing them in broad daylight are slim. When you first enter the wood, it seems as though nothing is there, but I found a sign that one has passed here just recently.
That's the track of a fallow deer. In the old days, when people were trying to establish how big an animal was, particularly fallow deer, it was gauged by the size of its track. And you can judge the width by how many fingers. 3 fingers long. It's not a really big one. It's probably a young animal. I can't tell from just the one track whether it's male or female. And here you can see beside it this wrinkly hair. That's a deer hair. And deer hairs are hollow. If I pick that up and pull on it, it'll snap neatly in half. Now, to see deer, especially this time of spring, it's the end of the hunting season, so these animals have been hunted since August. You can be very alert. You have to be very, very quiet. I put gloves on because if you lift your hands with the binocular and they're bright, it's like a flag waving in the woods. You need mute colours. A stick really helps because you can steady yourself so that you can move quietly through the forest, particularly negotiating obstacles. You must have a binocular so that you can see through the woods because you want to see the deer first. Fallow deer are very alert. If they see you or they hear you, they don't necessarily run off, but if they smell you, the chances are you won't even know that they were there.
Deer and boar have always been central to the history of this forest. In the 11th century, it was protected as a royal hunting reserve where Norman kings could practice their hunting skills.
You can see which way the wind's going. I've got some talcum powder here. The wind's coming straight up at us. That's ideal. It means our scent is going that way. There's a deer trail here going across the side of the hill. We're going to follow that. Our scent is always going to go uphill now. Our attention is going to be forwards and to the left. At this time of day, I'd expect the deer to be gently grazing or sitting still, chewing the cud. It's very easy to bump into them. It's very difficult at this time of day to find deer without them seeing you first. I've come up this stream because I've got a film crew with me, and that will help to muffle the sounds that they're making behind me. The wind is coming from this direction now, so I'm going to turn and move across the slope. I've got the high ground, so I should have a good view. You can see here a couch where a deer has been lying, and here, and here. It's a very faint sign. There are some hairs as well.
The footprints and the couches tell me that the deer have passed through here recently, but after 2 hours of searching, I still haven't spotted one.
Well, we've stalked this whole forestry block here. It's a big area. The crew have been absolutely superb, really quiet, very, very difficult with the equipment they're carrying with them. I suspect that the deer are in this conifer block here. That's where all the sign seems to be leading. But it would be impossible for us to go in there with all the equipment we've got. It would be just too prickly and noisy. So today the deer win, but another day I'll win.
I haven't given up hope entirely. The crew and I will try again at a later time of day when there's more chance the deer will be moving about. In the meantime, I'm up and about the next morning to see if I'll have more luck with another of the forest's secretive animals. I've made the steep climb to the top of a south-facing slope in the heart of the forest.
I've come up here because this is perfect habitat for one of our best camouflaged wild creatures. And it's a creature I really like, but many people misunderstand.
The bracken on this ridge traps the heat from the sun, making it the ideal place for adders to bask and warm up in order to become fully active.
You see him just there. He's unaware of us. Very nice and gentle. You see him just there?
Adders are distinctive for their black diamond pattern. The greyish-white body tells me this is a male. Females can range from brown to yellow or even brick red. At this time of year, it's more than likely this male is searching for a female to mate with.
He's got his tongue out, scenting the air. I'm certain he's searching for her.
Adders are Britain's only venomous snake and use their venom to catch and kill their prey, usually small rodents. But otherwise, adders are not typically aggressive and will only use their venom as a last means of defence.
As soon as they want to disappear, they slide into some cover and they just rely on their camouflage. It's so effective. There's a zigzag pattern on their back, just like the edge of a bracken leaf. They're such lovely creatures, and they're so persecuted. People have this deep-seated fear of snakes, and you can understand that. But today, we walk around with great big heavy boots on. We're much more of a threat to the snake than the other way around. Wonderful. Nothing to be afraid of. Lovely.
This rich natural habitat wouldn't be here if it wasn't for man-made industry. Between the 16th and the 19th centuries, the forest oaks were exploited for the rapidly expanding shipbuilding industry. It provided the timber for Sir Francis Drake's fleet to combat the Spanish Armada, as well as those of Lord Nelson, who crowned it the finest timber in the kingdom. Consequently, he ordered 30 million acorns be planted to ensure that the Royal Navy would always have timber to build its ships. The timber industry in the Forest of Dean continues to this day, with coniferous plantations planted alongside older broadleaf trees, creating a rich and varied tapestry. This mixed woodland is hugely beneficial to one animal in particular. It's one of our most elusive and magnificent birds of prey, the goshawk, the phantom of the forest. Goshawks hunt amongst the open alleyways created by the deciduous trees. Their broad wings enable it to fly at high speed, whilst weaving in and out of the trees to catch its prey on the wing. But goshawks also take advantage of the denser coniferous woodland.
What I'm looking for is a nest site in this area here. You've got all these beautiful larch trees, and it's likely that the goshawks will put their nest high up in a tall one of these. You can see what a tangle it is, which gives them good cover. The twigs of the larch are excellent for locking together, so they make good nesting material.
It's really difficult to get a clear view into the nest. It's really well positioned. These birds are amazing because they can fly through the trees, which is just, it seems to defy belief when you see it. And even accessing that nest up there through the tangle of all those branches, it's quite incredible really. So we can get a better viewpoint.
In the 1960s and 70s, goshawks were reintroduced from Scandinavia, after relentless persecution drove them to extinction within the UK.
You can hear the goshawk. There's a bluetit in the nest, stealing downy feathers. That is really funny. The little bluetit's raiding the goshawk's nest for down feathers. Cheeky devil. And we've seen the female fly over, so I think she may well have spotted us. Obviously, it's not just me here, there's the crew and everybody. So we're going to back off now. I'm going to leave a wildlife cameraman here to see what he can get. Fascinating.
This female is one of 40 goshawks breeding here in the forest. Across the country, there are now 400 breeding pairs. They're making a confident recovery, and as a top predator, their presence here reflects the general health of the forest. The best advice I can give if you're wanting to see some of this beautiful wildlife for yourself is to keep as still as possible and don't give up. My persistence is paying off as I catch my first glimpse of the local fallow deer.
Fantastic animals. Just a small group of bucks there. It's lovely to see. But I can see them because they're moving their tail. The old term for a tail is a single. And the fallow deer has the longest tail of any British wild deer species. And it's a dead giveaway. You see that tail flick, even hundreds of metres away, you can tell straight off what species it is. But despite that, their camouflage is remarkable. In fact, if you don't know they're there, you can look at a fallow deer and it's almost like you can see through them. Their coat, their pelage is just so perfectly toned. And it's also a time of year when they start to change their coats. And they can look a bit shabby and a little raggedy. And I often think that bucks at this time of year, once they've lost their antlers, they kind of retire for a little while. They're not at their best, and they go away to repair themselves and get ready for the coming year. They've got this particular way that they look at you. They see what you are. They're not fooled. They're very intelligent, I think. And if they smell you, or they're the least bit perturbed, they just vanish. They just filter into the woods like mercury.
Spring is a great time for observing wildlife, as all the forest animals are out and about, taking advantage of the sudden abundance of food. As the forest comes to life, there's ample opportunity for me too to forage and discover what's on offer. Today I'm going hunting for a salad.
The great thing about this time of year is that I'm totally spoiled for choice. This flower here, this is lady's smock, and that's got a lot of vitamin C in it. It's quite peppery. This little plant is quite a golden green, and that's golden saxifrage. It's on the bitter side, but it's a nice addition to my salad. I'm going to collect a little bit of that. Now I guess we all have our favourites, and this little delicate plant is my favourite British wild salad plant. This is wood bittercress. It's so strong a flavour, it's a little bit bitter. What I like to do is to keep this plant from flowering, keep chopping the flowers back, and then you get a bushy plant that's a little less bitter. It's delicious. Wonderful. Hope I can find some more. Now this is one of the wild plants that everybody really knows. It's people call it wild garlic. I know it as ramsons. It's actually an onion. It's the wild onion, Allium ursinum. And just walking through this, you just get this garlic smell everywhere. And the way I like to use it, best of all, is to take the flower bud. Before these open, you can just put this pod into your salad, and it's a surprise. People don't recognise it, and it has this pungent spring onion garlic flavour. Well, when they open up, to literally just take these young, delicate flowers and sprinkle them into the salad, because they give nice colour and a much more delicate garlic flavour, and they're really nice.
Although some of these leaves are edible, there are plants here that are poisonous and dangerous to eat. It's taken me years to be able to identify which is which, so be very careful not to eat any plants unless you're guided by an expert.
This is what I'm looking for. This is the small-leaved lime tree. It's a tree that once was very abundant in Britain, but is much less so today. But these leaves are very bland in flavour, but they're very delicate, and that's, I guess, our wild lettuce in a way, if you like. It's the equivalent of lettuce in a salad. Got one last wild ingredient for my salad, and that's a little bit of this cherry blossom. I don't want too much of this. It's got a little bit of cyanide in it, but it gives it a slight almond flavour. Very delicate, very nice. It's quite sweet. I think I'll put a little bit of tomato in and some oil, and there we go. Now that looks and smells absolutely wonderful. Enjoyed the walk, but now is the joy of the eating. See how that is. Believe me, it's every bit as good as it looks.
It's getting late in the day. I've been given permission to light a fire near my camp. In the forest, everything I need is close to hand.
It's about that long.
I'm going to use a classic method of starting a fire, using friction to create an ember.
There's the drill made, and the hearth is made, so I now need to find a bow and a piece of wood to push down with. Cut close to the saddle so the tree can heel over properly. There's a bow. It doesn't need it to be in any way springy. It just needs to have a bend in it, basically. And that's time to put it all together. Doesn't take long. You can use natural fibres. I'm going to be a bit lazy here today, just for speed more than anything. Tight. Stretch a little bit. I'm not going to drill where there are knots, because the wood is hard there. Drill in between them. And just to get the thing started, I just make a very shallow depression in the wood. Now what I have to do is cut a notch in here so that I can collect the dust that's produced to make an ember. Never rush any carving job, just take your time. Little cuts soon add up. For tinder I'm going to use this dead bracken. At this time of year there's a lot of this around, and it burns very readily, particularly if it's dry. Makes a good tinder because it dries fast after rain. But of course you have to be very careful if you're lighting fires this time of year, because the forests are full of bracken, and if that catches fire then we have a disastrous result, and that's not what we're about. And there is our ember. Give it a second or two. It grows a little bit. Pick it up very carefully and pop that onto the tinder. And there's our fire. Very special thing. People ask, why do you make fire like this in a world of matches? Well, I don't need to buy a match. That's what it's about. Fire is the one tool, the one skill that separates us from other animals. It's our unique invention, if you like. Being able to provide it for yourself from nature is very special. I'm convinced these fires burn hotter than those lit with matches, because they burn inside.
I love the forest. The more time I spend like this within it, the more connected to this secret world I become. 500 years ago, 3/4 of Britain would have looked like this. We're lucky that there are still places today where we can witness this incredible wildlife firsthand. Before I leave, I'm hoping to see the wild boar at dusk, the boar's favourite time to forage for food. I've enlisted the help of wildlife ranger Neil Solis, and for the last few nights he's been laying out grain to attract them to this spot. And clearly the boar are unable to resist.
Those piglets are amazing. No, she's not. You can see here we've got the 2 sows have come down with their piglets. That one there, she's a lot more alert. The wind's all over the place and they can scent us. She can hear me now, I think, as well. The other sow's completely unconcerned. And the piglets, well, they're just having the time of their life there. Wasn't that neat? That's something very few people in Britain have seen. It's an animal that really should be in our landscape. But the challenge will be for us to learn to live alongside it, because I think we're going to see a lot more of these animals in the future.